फिर से करो. In every heartbeat of life, there's a story.
Sort of fundamentally, it's a question also of the politics of knowledge, and this is something that we've been grappling with because a lot of the time, people like us in our comfortable middle class lives, we think that we know.
With each shared experience, there is an invitation to each one of you to introspect, to question, how does this resonate with me?
But actually, when you go out there, you realize that you know so little, and that there are so many other forms of knowledge that may not be written.
Join us as we dive into tales that feel written from the pages of our own lives.
And I think that has been sort of a wonderful journey for us, a fantastic journey, and it's been a very humbling journey actually.
Reflect on each narrative and ponder how these tales mirror your own journey. Because in every shared story, there's a spark waiting to ignite your own path of personal transformation. This is Saujanya, your host, welcoming you to our new series, The Change Catalyst from Attitude Makeover. Welcome to the Attitude Makeover Change Catalyst series. This is your host, Saujanya Shetty. As we explore the unseen pathways and stories untold, we're joined today by Anjali Monteiro and K.P. Jayasankar. Together, we'll uncover the transformative power of storytelling through the lens of their journey through award winning documentaries, 33 and more, and growing. Let's delve into a conversation that transcends the personal and touches upon the collective pulse of our society. As always, I hope you enjoy this conversation. Thank you so much for being part of Attitude Makeover. Welcome on board. And thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you for this. It's a privilege that
Yeah,
we are
we are
part.
looking forward to our conversation.
Yes.
Feeling is likewise here. So I always start with getting to know my guests a little better. We've spoken, but I think for someone who's listening, you guys have been together for at least 40 years now, doing these movies, 33 plus awards. Some of these documents are more long term, where you've gone back again and again to sort of build on the storyline itself. Before I get into the conversation of your own journey through this whole documentation or the process of creating documentaries, tell us a little bit about yourself. Who are you all? Where are you all from? What upbringing and what early beginnings did you all have? How did the thought of venturing, because you all were both doing something else, and how did the thought of venturing into this beautiful world of documenting or documentary creation really happen or come into being?
Well, I guess in a sense, both of us are accidental filmmakers. Well, I did a master's in economics, and then I was teaching economics at undergraduate level for a couple of years. And I was deeply interested in working with communities, with underprivileged communities, doing some kind of educational work. And that's how I got into working with, this were pre-video days, this was in the 70s. So got into working with slide sound and making educational materials for discussion in the bastis of Mumbai. And through that, so I worked with a filmmaker. So I was not particularly inclined to the media. I was more interested in people and social change. So that's how I got into working with the media. And then I joined TISS in 1983, and of course muddled along, I think, a lot of the time, because I knew absolutely nothing and I made a lot of mistakes, I think. But that's how I learned, and over time really got passionate about working with the media.
And I grew up in Kerala and I studied physics, chemistry, and maths for my graduation. And I was not very happy with uh, science per se. So I also studied, I mean, not really formally, but did painting. And I wanted to become actually a painter. That was not to be. Then I came to Bombay and started working in a refinery. And then I just started learning German as a hobby. And then I got seriously involved in it because of my interest in literature and philosophy. So then I actually went on to do my master's in German studies, and I taught for a while at the university. I mean, as a visiting faculty, and then I started doing my PhD at IIT Bombay. It's in philosophy, humanities, and social sciences, specializing in culture studies and philosophy. And I always also the other interest that I had was film. So I wanted to be also always wanted to make films even when I was very young. So then when I met Anjali, she was making her first film uh, and editing in IIT Bombay, and so I just asked her whether can I come and observe what you're doing because of my interest, and that's how it all started. And then I
So you
went.
all were dating when she was making the movie?
Not at all. We were kind of colleagues for. This was in
85.
1985. Yeah, so 85, and then worked till worked. We were colleagues till 89 when
89.
we got married.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
So
And
we primarily colleagues and friends, and then incidentally became, partners as well in
partners
life.
in crime.
Yes.
And how did the plunge happen? Because, as a couple, you have a child, bringing up the child. We're living in a very capitalistic world. There's a lot of fears around taking plunges like this. And you've ventured into a filmmaking space which is not so lucrative either. And so the plunge must have been a lot more difficult in terms of just deciding to say, okay, let's go this route. It's not just the creative side of it, but just the whole gamut of things that one has to think of when you're taking a plunge as this is pretty big, right?
Fortunately for us, taking that plunge was not so difficult because we had an institutional support. So we were primarily academics in an institution making films with, to start with, very, very low budgets.
Mm,
So, and that also helped us do more work because uh, we used to spend very little money and literally flying under the radar of the institutional kind of financial arrangement. So it was not so difficult, and of course we were on our salaries, so to speak, and then we had an infrastructure.
mm,
Minimal equipment. When we started, it was really, really rudimentary. And uh, but we had to begin with, we didn't have great freedom to do what we wanted to. We had to kind of plug into the institutional mandate, work with other departments, and that was in the 80s. And over a period of time, we were able to kind of create a space for ourselves where we could do our own work. And we also, the funding situation also improved because we had uh, some specified funding from the Tata Trust. So that also helped us. And so and so taking the plunge wasn't that difficult financially, but of course it meant a lot of uh, blood, sweat, and tears, so to speak. We kind of set up the two of us together, set up the School of Media and Culture Studies, which was just a small unit called Audio Visual Unit.
When I joined, it was called Unit for Audiovisual
Yeah.
Records.
So we had a very limited mandate, which we kind of expanded to have a master's program and and PhD as well, and various other uh, initiative. So it wasn't that difficult, I would say, compared to an independent filmmaker.
mm.
Uh, but and also that we didn't have to worry about marketing our film, to be make it marketable, so to speak. So we didn't have to kind of make film for television or which other sponsoring agencies which who had their own compunctions. So we didn't have to do that. Though we kind of ended up showing our work on television as well. But that's kind of uh, which kind of also brought in revenue more than the kind of money that the institution invested in it. So we always work for the institution.
Yeah,
And I think
I
that
guess
helps
also,
in terms. Sorry, go ahead, go ahead.
I said, I guess we were also not interested in making that much of money. It was more, following a passion and doing work that was meaningful, doing work that resonated with our concerns. And I mean, if you look at our films, I, I think we had probably not, articulated our own concerns to ourselves that clearly at the initial point of time. But if you look at one film after another, there is some kind of a thread, so to speak. It may be, not that clear, but there is a concern with issues of identity, issues of us and them, issues of questioning the safe space that we come from. So I guess that was something that both of us felt strongly about, and we kind of gravitated towards spaces and themes that allowed us to explore these ideas.
One thing I saw when I went through all the movies you sent was there was a constant uh, thread that held together. There was held together one movie after another, which is about changing our perspectives about the world we are part of and hearing the untold stories of something that we wouldn't have been exposed to itself. And I felt that was a big game changer when I went through it, like right from the threads and the weavers to the latest one. There's a continuous storytelling around, perspectives, building perspectives of how India is changing, or the vastness of India and the untold stories of some of these, nooks and corners of India that we don't know about, and the harmonious way in which living happens in spite of all the challenges and the changes that are happening. Is that something I have taken away as a solo person, or is that something you commonly hear from people who watch your movies?
Yeah, I guess it's. I think people do bring out that point, and I think sort of fundamentally it's a question also of the politics of knowledge, and this is something that we've been grappling with, because a lot of the time people like us who are in universities, who are in urban centers and are comfortable middle class lives, we think that we know, you know we have the written word, we um, think we have mastery over language, over knowledge. But actually, when you go out there, you realize that you know so little, and that there are so many other forms of knowledge that may not be written, that are embodied, that are passed on through oral tradition. And I think that has been sort of a wonderful journey for us, a fantastic journey. And I think a little bit of that is what we've tried to communicate through our films. What we ourselves have learned through our encounters with our subjects in the field, and it's been a very humbling journey actually. And we hope that a little bit of that sort of gets communicated through the films.
In fact, I mean, very often one is asked, "What is the impact of your film?" And so it's a question that we dread. I have no answers to it. Both of us kind of uh, get very perplexed and by that question. But the question that we ask ourselves is that what is it? How have we changed in our encounters with our subjects who have taught us so much, and who are not conventionally, as Anjali said, not you know educated, but we have met all along our journey very wise people who uh, probably are not educated in the sense that we understand, or nor are they materially privileged, or in terms of their access to resources. uh, but we found a lot of uh, wisdom and knowledge in very very unexpected quarters, from prisoners who wrote poetry to s- uh, organic Sufi scholars in Kutch. So the journey has been tremendous, and I think we've learned a lot more than what we did in in a university. And
I think
that
for me, when I watched the movie on the prisoner one, oh, that was beautiful. The wisdom that I saw in every bit of the recording there was amazing. And I think I want to have a follow up to what you spoke about, Anjali, but more to Jayasankar. When you speak about the politics of knowledge, when you walked in first time to today, how is that transformed for yourself? And I'd like to come back to you as well, Anjali, in terms of how that has changed you. Because here's my take, and I think it's a very powerful thing to go deeper into. I read a lot. I think I'm very well informed. I'm very conscious of what I read, from where I read, and so on and so forth. And yet, when you go down out there and meet people and have conversations, a lot of these myths are broken, a lot of these perspectives are changed, a lot of the way we question ourselves is changing. It's not what we've understood that has changed, it's the depth of that, it's the magnitude of that, and it's how we look at it that's really, it just has like a complete change. How has it changed for you guys? Starting with you, Jayshankar.
Uh, if I may recount an anecdote, which is very, very important to us, is it's an anecdote about which is related. Should I say tell the story?
Which one?
The boatman.
No.
Uh, Sorry, I couldn't. Uh, uh, there is this organization called Deccan Development Society in Telangana, in a place called Pastorpur. And the person who's in charge is a very interesting activist and a filmmaker called P.V. Satish.
Who is
And
no more?
who's no more, is a really significant figure in the uh, domain of community media, and how he has kind of worked with various groups to kind of promote the idea of filmmaking, uh, not from a very formal training perspective, but from the point of view of social justice and rights-based approach. Uh, so he works. The organization works with Dalit women who are not literate, but they are, when it comes to using a camera or using visual medium, they are as good as any one of us. They can shoot, edit, everything. So really good. And you know and he tells a story of a boatman, to kind of narrate how certain kind of hierarchy of knowledge is established, particularly within the university system. So he says there is a scholar, an upper caste scholar, who is crossing the river, and he turns to the boatman and asks him, have you read Rig Veda? So the boatman says, no, I haven't read that. So he said, quarter of your life is wasted. And then he goes on and says, have you read Atharva Veda? So the boatman says, no. And he says, half of your life is gone. So then there was a big storm, and the boat is about to sink. And the boatman turns to the scholar and asks him, do you know how to swim? So he says, no, then all your life is lost. So, how, for example, certain kind of knowledge is always valued, and how there are gatekeepers for this knowledge. There are people who have knowledge, and access is also limited. And you create a sense, and university systems are very well known for doing this, so kind of uh, uh, how do I say, undervaluing other kind of knowledge, rather than certain kind of, particularly today, even the kind of knowledge that is more social sciences, or is kind of less significant than, say, for example, say engineering, or what they call STEM. Uh, so that's something that we been very conscious. So, and that's why I would think that forays into various communities, and engagement with people whom we think are wise, has been a uh, area of great learning for us.
How has that changed you from when you started to today?
So personally, for me, I mean, also since I wanted to become a painter, and artists can be very author centric kind of activity. You don't really care about what you think is social commitment, or engagement with, because you create sitting in a in a space. Uh, but from there, to a point where creation is a more of a it's a participatory activity. It's not that I create on my own, but it's more of a dynamic encounter with another creative person of various. I mean, he or she may not understand the kind of uh, uh, the process of filmmaking or the kind of the activity that one is involved in, but at the same time, create a space where both of us could uh, interact and create something together. So that's
Mm.
been our thrust. So in that sense, that's a change that I would see in myself. Probably Anjali is different because she comes from a different perspective. So and also learning from each other. We have two very different ways of approaching things, and we worked together for almost 4 decades, and it's also been important in terms of learning from each other, uh, kind of arriving at, I mean, so collaboration is the key word here, and how you learn from each other and also negotiate with each other, and I mean, at least in the beginning, and then also there is also two different gender perspectives also here, isn't it? So we think, I mean, because of social location and both in terms of gender, all that has played a role.
How has it changed for you, Anjali?
Uh, yeah, I think when I was in my early 20s, uh, I really was, passionate about wanting to change the world, and somewhere I felt, I don't know, responsible, guilty for the inequality that was there in the world, for the oppression, for the injustice, and I felt that I had to change it. And I think what I've realized over the years is that, well, I still am committed to changing the world. I still am committed to social justice. But I realized that uh, sort of I'm not some kind of Don Quixote who's going out there and I can't change things on my own. At the most I can do is to try and start a process of dialogue.
I want to understand a little more about how these exposures have changed or reshaped your views of the world we live in. From when you started, I mean, we just talked about how it's changed you as an individual, but how has it reshaped your world views as you've gone from one movie to another?
Yeah. Yeah, again, I'll sort of maybe start off with a story. So there was this film that we were making with the Warli community, working with their stories, and uh, we collaborated again with an organization called Kashtakari Sangatna that was in the Hanu, which was working on the rights of the indigenous communities there, including the Warlis. So we started working on a film. With their stories, which are extremely interesting and wise stories, and stories that sort of teach us so much about the world, and stories that also have embedded in them their own history of being expropriated and exploited. So there is this story about a rat, and the rat starts out with a thorn in its tail, and it asks a woman to remove the thorn with her sickle, and then the sickle slips and the tail gets cut off, and so he takes the sickle from the woman in place of his tail, and it goes on. So the rat keeps on going on and giving what it has to somebody, and in return taking much more. And finally the story ends with the rat getting the Adivasi's wife. uh, and then when we were in that place and working with people, there were moments when we felt sort of deeply uncomfortable when we were recording. So we felt that people were performing for us, and then they would do something and they say, "Do you want something more?" And I think we really felt like rats with cameras, and and we began to question, what are we doing here? I mean, why are we taking their stories? Why are we documenting their paintings, and what's in it for them? So I think probably that first film that we made, that kind of, where we really, I think it was the first film where we work closely with communities on their concerns. I think that was, in many ways, sort of opened out, more than giving us answers. I think opened up so many questions for us, and questions that we still carry as within our practice as we go along. Do you
Has
remember that?
Yes, of course.
between the two of you, which one of you keeps each other grounded with these questions? Is it more a mutual thing, depending on where you are, or under what situations do you all sort of hold each other accountable with these questions, or question where the direction in which you're going itself?
Mhm.
I think we mutually depend on each other. I mean, in fact, uh, I mean, every decision that we take, probably sometimes with a bit of a negotiation, but it's always done with negotiation, and we support each other. We look forward to each other's support. I mean, at least I look forward to her support when I do a decision, which is difficult. So it also makes life very easy, in the sense that if I have a question, that I mean, since I trust her and I value her opinion, it's easy for me to take that decision. And I think both of us kind of. I mean, when we do work, there are areas of negotiation and kind of disagreement, but we always arrive at a common kind of a place where we both are comfortable. And having spent time together the last 4 decades, almost 24/7, and in fact, our friends call us the Siamese twins. So we just kind of have practically done everything together. And so I think, I guess it is, each of us kind of have different competencies, and we kind of intervene and say that, look, this is how I think it should be done. Do you want to add something more to that?
Yeah, probably I'm more a people's person in terms of, uh, I'm the one who does the interviews, or um, sort of looks after the situation in which we are. Um and I think Jayasankar translates those concerns into the way in which he uses the camera, and of course we edit together. So I think those concerns are common, and those concerns are constantly there as we are in the field. And so I think we both hold ourselves as well as each other accountable when it comes to exploring those questions.
Yeah, comparatively, I think I would think of myself as a little more reticent and more shyer than her, and I mean, I would let her handle the uh, front office, so to speak, and if I may use a very crude term, but otherwise, I mean, but we know each other's kind of. I mean, both of us have kind of. Alignment in terms of the kind of concerns and the worldviews to a great extent, because we work together. Even when we were doing a PhDs, we were kind of constantly in touch with each other, taking each other's suggestions. So we kind of, though it was at a late age, we kind of grew up together, so to speak. So
Yeah. I
you
want to
say,
go back to the example you gave of the rat, Anjali. One of the things I have observed when doing podcast is the more comfortable I make my guests on the other side, the conversation becomes a lot more free flowing, and it opens up avenues for more the unspoken conversations as well. um, but it requires that bit of groundwork to be done to be able to support something like that. In your case, you're going to the most untouched spaces of India itself, untold stories of India. And there's always this thing of I'm first time in front of the camera. So I've seen when people sit in front of the camera, they change as personalities itself sometimes. How do you manage to sort of keep that balance? Because it requires you to get them to a comfort level, so it just becomes a natural process for them than um, most almost all your documentaries, I couldn't think of it as stage. It's very natural. Even the prison, and I love the prison one. Um, I really enjoyed watching it. Even the prison one, the way you've captured the shots, the way you've captured the wisdom of this gentleman was really beautiful. But I think you sort of put, first of all, that person at ease, or that set of people at ease. How do you do that?
Yeah, I think what's very important is to have be on the same page as your subject. So have, even before you go into the field with the camera, you meet them, you talk to them, you discuss with them what you're doing, and you try to help them understand how this is also something in their interest.
Hmm.
It's not that I'm here to make a film, but let's see how we together can do something. So we take on board all their suggestions, for instance, in terms of where to shoot, what kinds of activities to document. So with the prison poets, for instance, we sat with them and read their poetry together, and sort of discussed which poems we should work with. So there is that sense of a common cause, a common ground. Sometimes we have to build rapport. We've also shown some of our earlier films to our subjects for
Hmm.
them to understand what we're doing. And so for instance, I remember when we were making the film Our Family, with this, which is with a transgender family in Tamil Nadu. We showed them our film on the YCP 1997 on the prison poets. So I think that gave them a sense of what we wanted to do with them, and that we were not here to make a film on their lives, and then paratroop in and paratroop out, but we want to together collectively explore some questions, and collectively look for some answers, or uh, we together we are probably trying to change the way people look at these communities, bring in layers that do not exist in the somewhat stereotypical notions that people have, whether it's about prisoners or whether it's about the transgender community, or indigenous communities. So I guess it's important to get that across, however which way you do it, whether it is to talking or sharing your work, or going through an organization. Sometimes that also helps to develop the initial rapport. So once that is in place, I think then people begin to feel comfortable. And the other thing which we do is, wherever possible, whatever we shoot, like at the end of the day or at some point, we share the material with our subjects, so that they get a sense of what we are doing. And I think that really helps them to understand the process.
So what is significant for us is more than making a good film is to kind of not to be not to violate the dignity and keep the ethics and politics of representation intact. We don't want to violate the dignity, and we do not want to uh, show anything that is. I mean, the question that we obviously ask is that whether I would like to be comfortable being asked this question or being shown this way. If the answer is no, we don't go there. For example, in when we were doing the prison film, there's an Italian tabla player, and he has some media experience. So he wanted to be shot in front of the Gandhi yard where Gandhi was in prison. In the film, that where he's sitting is actually in front of the cell where Gandhi was, Mahatma Gandhi was kind of imprisoned. And before I took the shot, he asked me, "Can you just come here and sit here, and so that I'll look through your viewfinder, see whether it's fine."
Wow.
And he liked the frame, and he said, "Yes, I mean, let's go ahead with this." So those are the small kind of steps that kind of make the subject comfortable, and we are here not to make I mean take away their images or take away, expropriate, or in a very predatory manner take these images, but we are here to kind of look at the things collaboratively. And I also remember when, for example, we went to Kutch, uh, in the film Soheda Sohoda, the Haji, in fact, told us in so many words that, which is not in the film, but when we shot the film and shown back to him, and he said, normally people come to kind of tell us what to do about life. Like they ask us about our crops, or socio-economic kind of. They do a lot of surveys, and they're not really interested in our own life world or our culture, and they want to tell us what it is. But I mean, you and of course he referred to another filmmaker called Shabnam Birmani. These are the two people who kind of come and ask about my concerns and my culture, and our poetry, and our the kind of interest, cultural interest that we have. So so that says a lot about how that filmmaking process should be. And in fact, when we were making that film, there was a, uh, you know, among some of these communities, there's a lot of proscriptions against women appearing on camera, and it's because of various reasons. For example, somebody came and took away picture of an image of a woman in the village, and I think they used it in a tourist poster in Kutch itself. And when they went to the market, they found, I mean, she had no right, she had no. Uh, Her consent was not asked for, or she had no control over how the circulation of this image kind of was happening. So they were a little apprehensive, and we had in one village, for example, we shot once, and they said, you can't show any women in your film, and we respected that decision, because it's impossible to shoot in a village situation where a woman might walk into my frame, and we decided to abandon that project for the time being, because we went back there later. Uh, and then we started working with this community called Fakirani Jats here so that's a film that we did. So then we had a long discussion with them about this aspect, whether we can show it. And they said, they kind of consulted they had a long debate and consulted the sarpanch and stuff like that. They said, they didn't see any problem in doing so. And in fact, there are a lot of sequences within the film where some of the women kind of express that kind of concern. Uh, they kind of express a concern that, they're taking away our images, they're shooting here, and they're saying that they will make a film about our culture, whatever. And we have no control about what they're doing, what they're going to do with this material that they're collecting. And it's there right in the film. So these are some of the ideas that we kind of uh, uh, we keep in mind. We never lose track of these when we are working. So what are the politics of representation itself?
As taking us through the last part of the conversation, which is when we started, I talked to you about how when I walked into this conversation, I wanted to draw a parallel between documentary filmmaking to journaling. And I think through the last conversation, when we're talking about the ahas, um, Jayshankar, you talked about how the you let the camera just record, and it became a journaling experience, and in that process you saw the space differently itself, and it changed the way you look at things itself. And what you talked about, Anjali, and how the Kutch experience basically changed the way you made the next set of films itself. So I feel somewhere there is a parallel that we can draw, or an analogy we could draw to the process of journaling to the process of document filmmaking. If you were to sit and talk to someone who's going through a process of change, and you are my guest as part of the Change Catalyst series, is where we bring in really transformative voices that challenge one to introspect and reflect, right? How would you draw this parallel, or is there any parallel at all? And if so, how would you draw this parallel, and what's that advice you would give to someone who's on this journey, who's just starting on this journey?
Well, one thing is, I think you have to. What is very important is to listen. You know, to because a lot of the time, uh, I think we are so sort of preoccupied with our own concerns and what we want to say, uh, that we don't give enough space to just to witness, to listen, to just be there and um sort of relate with empathy and compassion. And I think that's something that's, I mean, over time I've realized has been very important to me. Not um, the less obsessed I am with what I want to say or what I have to say, and the more I'm able to give space to the world around me, to the people around me, to uh, express themselves in the way that's meaningful to them, and I'm able to, bear witness to that, and um, maybe represent that in some way in through my creative practice. uh, I think I'm the richer for it, and I think maybe the people who read it or watch it are also perhaps, it does give them an insight uh, that perhaps they would not have if we were so obsessed with, saying something, doing something, intervening, you know in the world. Would you
Yes, of course. I mean,
agree with me?
yeah, of course. I think it's also taught us to see, as we said, talked about wisdom where it is least expected, and beauty where it's not least expected, uh, meaning where we didn't expect to find it. So that's something that is the journey has kind of brought us to. And we've also, I mean, we worked a lot in Bombay, for example. Bombay has been one of our, uh, you know, an
Huh.
area of our a theater of our work, so to speak. And I mean, people think of it as a terrible place, and obviously there is this very interesting uh, formulation of the city by Charles Correa, who says is it a it's a wonderful city and a terrible place. So
Mm.
how do you find that balance between that wonderfulness of that city, but at the same time show the terribleness of that. So how do you strike that balance? And but all of us have kind try to find meaning in this context, in the location that one is. So, and how does one that with empathy relate to that idea? See, um, in fact, we had an experience once. We have worked in Kutch for 9 years, and showing the third film, and somebody from the audience said, I mean, I'm not saying that it is not the right thing to do, but said that, no, look, I saw your first film and I went to Kutch. I didn't see any of the beauty that you are kind of showing here, and I found it a very dirty place. I mean, well, I'm not saying I'm not finding fault with that approach, but you can. I mean, it depends on what you're looking for and what you're seeing.
Yes.
So it's not just there are ways of seeing in which things appear to you. So for us, we have found. I mean, also you can also go to those spaces and say, I didn't find any wise people in the prison. Quite likely, but this has been our experience, and this has been our search. This has been our journey to look for uh, wisdom and beauty, and in people's lives, not from my perspective. I mean, to me, it may not appear as a beautiful experience or beautiful life or a contented life, but there are ways in which people are living this, which is they find meaning in that. So, how do you now relate to that? Has been something that we have learned and internalize. Be humble, and kind of approach it with humility, and see that space from. Try to see that space with empathy and compassion.
I think what you're
I,
both saying is, sorry, go ahead.
no, I think if one is able to understand that every other human being is like oneself in some ways. Everybody looks for meaning in what they do. Everybody, uh, you know, looks to relate to others and the world. Maybe the ways are different, the searches are different, but one is able to relate to that search.
I think what both of you are saying is know what you're seeking for, be very conscious of what you're seeking for, and then lead with compassion, empathy, and listening. I think then that's where, you know, the rubber hits the road. And I can, again, I think it's a very fair and wise advice, because if you know what you're seeking for, that's when your eyes are open to everything, to what KP you were saying. If I'm not seeking beauty in Kutch, if I'm not seeking wisdom in Kutch, then I'll never find it. But if I'm seeking it, I'll find it everywhere, in every conversation, in every interaction. That's what you're trying to say there.
Sure.
I
Precisely.
love that. I love that. And tell me one thing, has this been applied to your own internal process as individuals as you're going through this? Because I'm sort of drawing a parallel between journaling and transformation, personal transformation, to the art of filmmaking and documentary filmmaking. Has there been an inner growth as a result of this, from where you started to where you are today as individuals?
Yeah, I would like to think so. Yes, I I mean it's not that. Yeah, I think accepting the idea of imperfection as the human condition, and not expecting perfection either in oneself or in the other. I think a certain amount of uh, what shall I say, tolerance both towards the other as well as the self. I think for me that has been very important and something I still struggle with, because I think all of us are, particularly when you come from a religion or from a belief system, I think we all are sort of bogged down with the idea of a utopia, a perfect space, a perfect person, and to realize that imperfection is the human condition and that one has to embrace that human condition with affection and compassion and anger and whatever all that comes, and all that is okay. I think for me that has sort of always been a struggle. It still is, but I think, uh, yeah, I'm sure I have grown in the process of that struggle.
In fact, we used an analogy once where somebody asked about our work. We've written about our work. I said we try to make Buddhas with butter. So you make it perfectly. You try all your commitments, but one day it's going to melt away. So, but that doesn't stop you from doing the best that you can. So that imperfection that Anjali talked about is and the insignificance and vulnerability is part of one's work, but
Yeah,
that doesn't stop one from investing all that is there. Uh, but we need to kind of confront the question of at the end, transience, which that Buddha might not be there for you long enough to kind of admire. So,
right.
but that's the idea that I think we use that analogy once. I think in some sense throwing a lot with struggles everybody has, in everyday struggles, be it questions of gender or caste or class, and throwing one's lot with them uh, is a kind of attitude that I would think is something that we need to develop. How we can, for example, we all have those, in our lives, power impinges in many different ways. As a gendered being, as a person belonging to certain class or with privileges. I think we need to uh, an attitude makeover would entail kind of questioning those privileges, uh, particularly of gender and caste. I would think that these are two areas where I think we need a lot more emphasis, because as teachers, one has realized that that's an area still uh, uh, there could be debates within in a classroom situation, both the gender as well as caste. So, an attitude.
Yeah, I would say beware of the normal. You know, uh, we tend to normalize and naturalize relationships of power.
Yeah,
So there's nothing we need to question that whole idea of normality. And I think that's important. Of course, it is also often uncomfortable to do that, but I think it's important uh, to do that. Yeah, to question our own normality, and that is the attitude makeover that has been of significance to me.
Yeah.
And it's a work in progress.
Yes, of course.
It's always, yes, yes. Well, thank you so much, Anjali and Jayasankar. I enjoyed this conversation. I enjoyed our previous conversation as well. Um, and I look forward to more. Look forward to more movie films from your end, and look forward to meeting you all in person as well. And thank you so much. As always, stay connected, and I'm looking forward to meeting you all in person soon. Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank you,
much.
Saujanya. We've thoroughly enjoyed this.
Anjali and KP, your storytelling is not just an act of creation, but a journey of evolution, both for you and the communities you engage with. To our listeners, let this conversation be a catalyst for your own storytelling, whether through journaling, filmmaking, or the art of just living. Thank you for guiding us through the rich tapestry of life and transformation. As always, I hope you like, subscribe, and share if you've liked this episode. Until next week, here's Saujanya signing off.